Hey everyone, it's Lisa with Are You My Cousin? It's Thursday, and I wanted to come and chat with you guys today. I have some genealogy tips I wanted to share with you. These are some of my favorite tips that I have, and probably what I would call some of my more effective tips that I use. And so I wanted to chat with you guys and make sure that I can share them with you, but I also want to hear from you guys with some of what your favorite tips are as well, because I think we can learn a lot from each other when it comes to um, sharing our tips and what works for some of us, because we can't be experts in all areas of our research. Different parts of the country have different nuances to their research as well as different countries. So as people are coming in, feel free to tell me where you're watching from today. It's always interesting to find out where you are watching from. If you are new, if you are just finding me for the very first time, I am Lisa Listen. I am the creator of Are You My Cousin, the website and the YouTube channel. And I strive to help take the overwhelm out of your genealogy research. I want to help you find your ancestors, and I want to help us all grow our family trees. So that's what I am all about. I do post new videos over on the YouTube channel. It's been a little slow lately. It's been kind of busy around here as I get ready for Roots Tech coming up, but that is where I try to hang out a lot. Hey, Shelly from Virginia, Goochland, Virginia. You know what? I think I've done some research for my own ancestors up in that area. We have Jackie from Kansas. Hey, Chris from Wisconsin. Oh, you guys must be really cold in that part of the country right now. Hey, Jennifer from Charlotte. Little known fact, guys, I grew up in Concord, right outside of Charlotte. Hey, Kim from cold and icy Southeast Oklahoma. I know you guys are getting such cold weather out there. Mary's from Minnesota, and oh, it's going by fast, guys. They're flipping by fast. Debbie from Connecticut and Nashville, and I see Tammy and Louise from Scotland. Nice to see you again, Louise. Glad you're here. Okay, guys, they're coming in so fast. I can't keep up. Denver. Yes, Jennifer, I bet you do know where Concord is. Oh, Chris, it's going to be a high of 8 tomorrow in Wisconsin. Oh, my gracious. Bernice in Buffalo. We have Georgia in the house. Oh, my gracious. Well, I am, for those of you, if you're new, I am from North Carolina. I am in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we just have just kind of a cold, rainy day today. And so it's a good day to be inside doing genealogy research, right? So we are here. So let me just catch up a little bit of what's going on with Are You My Cousin while things are coming in. I am busy preparing for Roots Tech that starts in like a month. Can you believe it? It starts, I think it's March, 2nd? Is the 3rd and 4th? I think I have the dates right. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of March out in Salt Lake City, but also a virtual option as well. So if you are not signed up for that virtual option, if you're not able to go in person, now go ahead and sign up. It's free. And again, it will all be on replay. So you don't actually have to watch it live, although it's really more fun, I think, to be able to do that. But you will have opportunities to watch later if you're not able to attend in person or watch the live videos. If you're able to be there in person, it's a fantastic experience. I hope you are able to do that. And I will actually be there. I'm speaking twice. I'm doing a talk on female ancestors, of course, because I talk a lot about that, as well as old family photographs, another topic I talk a lot about. So I hope if you're there that you do stop me in the hallways and speak to me and let me know that you're there. So yes, oh, Jennifer's watching virtually. Wonderful. Yes. So really glad that that's coming up and that we have that opportunity to go and do it in person, but virtual too. It's going to be huge. I'm so excited about the whole thing. So watch your emails that I send you about upcoming things that are happening at Roots Tech. Things that, as I hear about them, I'll be sharing them with you as well. I will be doing Facebook Lives daily from Roots Tech in March. So if you want to see what crazy things happen when you do these things live and kind of in a public event, that's always interesting. Last time I did that, I had a maid knocking on my door coming in during the middle of one of my live streams. It was a lot. It was fun. We had fun with it. So anyway, that's there. But one thing you can do, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Or if you're watching on Facebook, go ahead and hit your like button or the follow button for the website, for my page, for the Are You My Cousin page. And that way, you'll get notifications and pop-ups when I go live during those time periods. And of course, you can always watch your emails. I'll try to put out a general schedule for that as well. Oh, Shelly's going to be there in person. Wonderful, Shelly. Make sure you stop by and say hello to me. Okay, so the other thing that just want to put out there, so I want you to be kind of keep in the back of your mind, and it's kind of a bit of a teaser, but for those of you who are struggling to research female ancestors, the women in those family tree. Um, I am in the process of updating my Finding Female Ancestors e-course, and I'm going to relaunch it in March. So it'll be after Roots Tech, but that'll be coming up. Watch your emails for that, and I will be relaunching that. I'm super excited to be able to offer that a little bit deeper as well. If you were already if you were a member of the e-course in the past, you'll have access to the new version as well. So I think some of you guys that I noticed the names were part of the original beta courses that I did. And so you will have access to the new and updated course as well. All right, let's get on to sharing some genealogy tips because I just like to do this every now and then. And again, I want this to be interactive, guys. So feel free to pop your favorite tips in the chat as we go along. If you have something that you want to share, I also have another one here. Let me put it in the. I'm going to put this in the chat, guys. There's also you can always find more of what I've got. Hang on. I have a hard time typing and talking at the same time. Let's see. I have more tips over on the website as well. And this post that I am putting in the chat right now. There we go. Okay, that's popping in there. So if you want to find more tips when we're done today, feel free to go to that website. I've put it in the comments below. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off with my favorite tip number one, and that is that we have to understand the terminology that we are finding in our records. So what does this look like? What does this mean? And why is it important? Well, I know when I first started genealogy research and I would read those deeds, and I didn't always understand every single word that was written in there because some of it was some of the legal language I might not understand. And so it's important that we understand all of the language. So, because for instance, when you're looking at, say, female ancestors, again, I talk about females a lot and trying to find them in my family tree. Things, terms such as like a femme sole or a femme covert, we have to understand what those terms mean because that can indicate her legal status at the time the record may have been generated for her. So that's an important piece of the puzzle that we need to know. Another one that I see frequently, and this may be more of a Southern thing, I'm honestly not 100% sure. I do think it's probably outside of the South as well, but if you have Southern ancestors, you definitely see this, where you'll have, say, John Smith Sr. and John Smith Jr. That doesn't always necessarily mean father son. Frequently it can, but it doesn't necessarily infer that there is absolutely a father son relationship. What it means is that at that time period, for that time period that record was created, there were two John Smiths. One was older, so they labeled him as senior, and one was younger, and so they labeled him as junior. So at that time period. But fast forward, say another decade, and the older John Smith died, and the younger John has now gotten married and had a child whom he also named John Smith. Then John Jr. has become John Sr. because he is the elder John Smith, and his son, when he appears in the records, would be the John Jr. So that junior senior designation doesn't always mean what we think it means. Okay, it's not attached to that individual as it is in more today. So make sure you understand those types of issues that are happening in the records during that time period, that terminology. I'll even throw you another one out there. The terminology using nephew, when somebody named a nephew in a legal record, that typically indicated it was not necessarily the nephew that we would think of in today's terminology. So like the son of a brother or sister, it could be a close family friend. It could just be a cousin. It could be somebody who is related blood, but not always. So we've got to keep that. If you're seeing things and it's not adding up, go to, say, a good law dictionary, like Black's Law Dictionary that you can find on Google Books, and look up and see how else that term might be used and what it might be referring to. Jan says she's seen a son named Junior. Yeah, and that's confusing as well. Exactly, exactly. It can be quite, it can get confusing and sticky to pull apart sometimes, but it's important that we do understand for the time because it does change over time, definitely. So we want to make sure that we're understanding, again, terminology and how it's being used for that time period in those records. All right, another tip that I want to offer, and I have been so guilty of not doing this, and I've wasted a lot of research time for this and I want to save you guys some time and headaches, is when you are researching on, say, like an Ancestry, a Find My Past, on MyHeritage, any of the big databases, or any database for that matter, not even big, it could be a small one, is to make sure you read the description about the collection that you're searching. And I want to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to pop up my screen here. I'm going to share my screen real quick here. And let me make it bigger for you guys. We'll do it this way. All right, let me go over and look at it. Okay, so here we have, this is just from Ancestry, and I just pulled this up as a California birth index, and we can see the years here. But where you find that is typically, it's going to be on the page where the record search box is. In Ancestry, it's usually below the search area, but you want to take time to read what's included. Okay, so you want to know what information that you can potentially find. You want to, this one that goes down, it tells us a little bit more about the vital records. Below here, it tells us the vital records that we might find here. It can also talk about at this point, you're going to learn a little bit more about maybe if it's a broken series, if there's something quirky about the records, or it doesn't cover 1 year got left out, or that's where you're going to find that kind of information. In this box underneath, it describes what you're looking at. So make sure you take time to do that. I will tell you that I have gone and searched for records. Again, so this one's actually pretty long. It has a lot of information as well to tell you what you might find over different periods of time. I have gone to do my searches and search, say for a birth. I know it was for a birth record one time, and I looked and I looked and I looked, and I thought, why isn't here? I know he was born there. I know there should have been a birth certificate. Well, after trying to search that database in numerous different ways, spelling the name differently and doing wildcard searches, I read the description below the box, only to discover that it didn't cover the year that I was looking for. There had been a problem with the record keeping, and then when they went and did the gathering the records to digitize them, there had been an issue with it, and so that particular date range that I was looking for had not been included. So I lost a lot of time, and probably got a gray hair or two out of that as well. Just being frustrated. So make sure that you guys are looking at that. And it's not just, again, for the Ancestry, but look, so if you're in a historical societies database, check theirs, see what their descriptions are about those collections, because they will give you some really important information about what is covered, what is not covered, and save you a lot of time in the process. So let me know, has anybody had that issue where they've searched and searched and searched only to discover that record set wasn't a complete record set? You can let me know in the comments, because it is a frustrating. I hope I'm not the only one who's done that, but then again, maybe I am, and that would be good because you're doing better than I am. All right, my next tip would be to check back at the genealogy databases that you research in for new and improved records. So make sure, and again, this is not just for the major databases, although they tend to do it more often. The big four: Family Search, MyHeritage, Find My Past, Ancestry. Check routinely for new databases that have been added. You might want to check every month. You might, what you can do is just put an alert on your calendar. So for the first Monday of the month, check genealogy databases. Or you might want to do it, say, every, once a quarter, once every 6 months. But make sure you've got some kind of schedule for yourself that you are going back and checking for new databases that are being added, or some that have been updated, because sometimes it really is a waiting game for genealogy. We have to wait. If we're not able to get to a record collection, sometimes we just have to wait. Sometimes we have learned more information in the process, and so by the time the next batch comes out, we're ready to go when that next set of records comes out. Archives do this. State archives will do this with their new digital collections that will be coming out. They have new collections on site that will sometimes become available. So you just want to make sure that you are checking all the places that you're researching in routinely for those new records to make sure that you're seeing those types of collections. And again, it kind of goes back to seeing what the new collections are and what's being updated, but taking that moment and seeing, reading that description and making sure it's got what you need in it. Jackie said she's been bad about reading the description of what she's looking at. Yep, I know we get in a hurry, and we think we're going to keep on moving forward. We'll just take a quick 5-minute look at for this record, and we get in a hurry and we tend to overlook that piece of the puzzle, definitely. So, yeah. All right, so we're going to make sure we know terminology. We're going to make sure we're reading descriptions of the record collections. We're going to check for updated databases. And again, these are not time-consuming tips. These are little tweaks that you can make today, and can make a difference in your research for that. All right, the next one will take a little bit of extra time for you, but that is creating a timeline for your ancestors. I do this routinely, particularly for my troublesome ancestors. I'm currently working on helping a family member untangle a family line, and I am truly mapping out a timeline. If you go to the website and you can put timelines in the search bar, you will find more of mine. But more often than not, guys, it's not unusual for me just to grab a legal pad and a piece of paper and just start writing. I tend to think really well when I'm writing and when I've got a pencil in my hand. So that works for me. And I typically, the reason I use those timelines, and whether you do it digitally, whether you're using the ones that are generated, say like on Ancestry, or when you put your tree on MyHeritage, those kinds of things, it lets you see the gaps in your research. That is probably the biggest thing that I do when I'm really stuck on a project. I go back to the beginning and I create that timeline because it allows me to identify gaps. It allows me to actually distinguish between people of the same name. Maybe I find out that once I've plotted everything out, I've actually got two people instead of one that I'm looking at. Maybe because I include locations on that, I'll even get the map out and map that as well. And that's when I learn, I'm like, oh, wow, I've got two different people, because I've got one that's, located in this part of New York City, but this one never really leaves this area of New York City. And they're not really, this doesn't make sense that they would be the same person. So I'm able to see the gaps. I'm able to untangle some of the, common surnames or common ancestors with similar names. That's a good way to do it. Louise says she likes the timelines. Yeah, really. They are so helpful to do. I love nothing better than putting them on a piece of notebook paper, and then I get my color pencils out and I'll color code them. And eventually they'll end up in my database, and eventually I will get that digitized. But the reason I do it the old-fashioned way with paper and pencil is I'm not distracted. I'm what's called a kinesthetic learner. By doing it and by working at it, it solidifies that data in my brain. And so that's what works for you. June says she's paper and pencil when she researches too. Exactly. And then you transfer by scanning the paper. Exactly. There have actually been studies done that say, I think that has to do with note taking. They were looking at college students where if people took notes on digitally versus by paper and pencil, was that the same thing for those who are, particularly for those who are kinesthetic learners or learn through movement and doing. And it actually, they showed a difference in it, that they retained better when they took notes on paper and pencil. So it works for me. And sometimes I get too caught up in the tech and wanting to learn more tech. And like, is there a better tech tool to do this? So if I just have paper and pencil, I can move along. All right. So yeah, create those timelines again, however you choose to do it, digital or paper and pencil. Tammy says she has one that's missing 3 years between censuses, and you can't seem to figure out how to get through that. Exactly. So those timelines it does let you, you know, get into that, and you will recognize you're missing 3 years for somebody, and that's when it helps you pinpoint where that brick wall is sometimes, as opposed to, "Okay, I'm just stuck, I can't get any further back." I had a similar problem with that, Tammy, in an ancestor where I was having a I tracked my ancestor back year by year, and I was missing. I got pretty close. I was missing. I had about 9-year gap, and then I was able to close it. I think I used tax records, and I was able to close it to about a 2-year gap. And but again, it was like, okay, I'm starting to understand and close in, and pretty important years. But I was able to eventually figure him out, by using that timeline and recognizing exactly which year and what was going on in history at that time period. So definitely want to get into those timelines, guys. June says she recognized the birth was before the spouse's birthing years that led to another wife. Yeah, perfect. Exactly. That's a great example, that by plotting it out, you recognize that, uh-oh, they couldn't have been born then. That doesn't make sense. There was another wife. So yeah, that definitely is another great way to do it. Sometimes with timelines, I'll put 2, maybe 3. Usually I keep it's about two names, where I'll put one on the right side of the paper, one on the left side of the paper. If I'm trying to see if 2 families are moving at within the same geographical areas together. So if I'm trying to track one, I can sometimes track a second one that way. And so I use lots of colored pencils in the process as well. That's just fun because I like color. All right, let's move on to the next tip. My next tip, guys, and I'll be curious to see how many of you actually do this, is I will perform no surname searches. So what does that mean? That means I will put in and search for ancestors not using a surname. Here, I can let's see if I can reshare that screen again. My screen, I'll show you what that looks like just real quick. Nothing too crazy going on here. Let's see. Let me grab that. Okay, so what does that look like here? Let me get back to the top. This is that, again, back to just that California birth index. I might put in, say, Peter, Joseph, maybe, and then I would leave this blank. So not even doing a wildcard search, I would just leave it blank. And maybe I know a birth year, let's see, 1916. Guys, I'm pulling this literally out of my head. I truly don't know. This one, haven't done the search before. I might leave the mother's name blank, last name blank, because again, I'm not sure what the surname is I'm looking for. Do I know what area it is in? So we could say San Diego maybe, and just see what's there. So I will fill out whatever I know. And the reason I do this is it could be that this last name was, I'm having trouble getting the correct spelling, or maybe it was transcribed so far off from what the original was, as we know that can happen, that I'm not picking it up when I look in the searches, and then I would hit search. So this allows me to then find all the possibilities of that surname. I can look. So that's one reason I do it. The other reason I do that would be perhaps in a census record, because maybe the surname is really, again, transcribed. Maybe the census writer's handwriting was so poor, I can't pick it up, but I happen to know that, let me come back to you guys, that I happen to know that, the children, that the father's name was Arthur and the children's name were Graham and Nancy. And as long as I might put in searching for Arthur, he has a son by the name of Graham, a daughter by the name of Nancy, and they lived in Halifax County, Virginia. And then I'm looking for that family grouping, and that is actually quite successful when I do my searches for, particularly in the census record, because as we know, sometimes those surnames and the handwriting, they're transcribed. It's hard to read, and so it's sometimes easier to find them as a group as opposed to the individual, if that makes sense. June said, yeah, right. The ink spots on the census records, they get over the surname, and then it's really, really hard to find that family. So it's much easier to do that. Jackie says she does that on Find a Grave. Absolutely. I've done it on Find a Grave as well, because that Find a Grave is can be pretty picky when it comes to spellings on the names. So yeah, definitely. So definitely try those no surname searches with that. Occasionally, and I will do, along with that, I will also do wildcard searches if I know, but the no surname search can be really helpful, I find, for some of those records like that. All right, let's see what my last one I have for you now. And this will probably come as no surprise for you if you guys have followed me for any length of time. But that is, we have to read about local history or local topics of interest for the ancestors. So what does this look like? So there are a couple things. Now, here's one you guys have probably seen before. Hang on. I read a lot of weird books. This one's Aaron's Daughters in America. It's about Irish immigrant women in the 19th century and coming to America. Okay, the reason I picked that one up to read is because it's important for me to understand in my search for my fourth great grandmother what happened when she landed in America, when she left Ireland, she ended up in America. What happened when her feet hit American soil? What did she have to go through? What did she do? What did life look like for her? What was the first thing she did? Who helped her? Where did she go? And why in the world did she end up in the foothills of the North Carolina mountains? I'm still working on that one, but I needed to understand what was happening. What was important to her as a young Irish woman. So by reading about Irish women who were coming over and landing in America, that helped me understand why she came. It helps me understand the characteristics about her. It helps me understand why she might have married at a later time period than, say, some of the other people, young women of the same age who are already here. It really helps me understand the thoughts and what was important to them. The other thing, another one that I've read too. Now this is called the Bento Brief. Let's see if you can see that. I think it's straight. So this is it's 60 years of letters from the Lower East Side to the Jewish Daily Forward. Now the Jewish Daily Forward is a newspaper, and it is still in existence today. And these are basically letters that Jewish immigrants, Eastern European Jewish immigrants who were settling in the Lower East Side of New York would write to the editor and ask them. There were all kinds of things in there, but asking them about life and about religious life and what does this mean? They've been in America, and I was reading one today about a young man. He was, talking about how much he enjoyed, growing up and knowing his grandparents and Jewish life and the traditions, but that they had moved out of the Jewish center and they were out more in the suburbs. And he was going to school. He was starting to go to law school, and he did not know how to find other young Jewish young adults that he could be with that had his same beliefs. So he was really worried about that. Other things about, I see multiple stories about women and families in their writing. And, have you heard about my husband? My husband has left. Where is he gone? I can't find him. He just disappeared. And now I don't know what to do. How do I, where do I find help to feed my children? Those kinds of stories. This is what was happening. This is what was happening to them. This was their life. This was some of these things are common. So we can, did I find my ancestors in here or my husband's ancestors? No. They're not named. In fact, there's nobody named in these, but it tells me what was happening in the community and what was important to the community. And again, it helps me, then I can predict a little bit more about his ancestors, about what was happening. And then another one that I read, again, like I said, I read some kind of crazy things. You should see what's downstairs now. This is called The Women Who Got America Talking. Okay, this one's by Carrie Seagrave, and it's about the early telephone operators. So women's occupation. Again, you knew I'd be reading one about women, right? So this is talking about the early telephone operators. This is really quite interesting because it talks about how they got started, but it also talks about things like the unions that they were involved in and that they created. And it was like another way of finding out, oh, wow, what if your ancestor, or what if these young women, were telephone operators? Well, these are some ideas about what was important to them. This would have been how long they worked. They had to be a certain height to reach the, what do you call this? I guess the telephone things that they plugged in. They had to do that. They had strikes. Okay, guess what? If your ancestor was a telephone operator and she was part of a big strike, you know what, that was in the newspaper, and you have an opportunity to possibly find her mentioned in a newspaper. So these are the kinds of things to go there. Now, when you find a book like this, or like the Aaron's Daughter, one of the important things is all these, I don't know if you can see this, notes in the back of the book. Why is that important? That's important because it's more sources that you could potentially look at. Now, there are a ton in this particular one, and I don't necessarily, most of them are probably pretty obscure and not things I'm going to go after, but I always look to see, because you never know when you might find one extra thing that would be the clue that you need. So June says she reads local histories and society newsletters, and thank you so much. I'm not the only crazy person who reads these things. Sometimes they're a little thick. It takes a while to get through, but I tell you what, I am nothing if not a tenacious researcher, and I don't want to miss something just because I didn't learn about the history behind it. I am that focused on finding and tracking down the women in my family tree. And, and I recognize that there's not always an answer, and I won't find everyone. I'm okay with that if I've done my due diligence on all of it. So plus, I just think it's interesting. It's about the stories, because ultimately that's what I'm after, is the stories within the family tree. I like to track that family tree, but I want the stories. I want to understand those people. June says if you need a photo of the old-fashioned telephone keyboard. Oh, yeah, that's true. You can find the old-fashioned telephone keyboards that way as well. So anyway, so those are my favorite tips that we've been talking about today. So would love to hear from you guys. I know some of you are watching on Facebook, some are watching on YouTube. Any of your favorite tips you want to share? Let me get back through and make sure I haven't missed any, because it's been kind of going over there. Yeah. So Sarah, she said she also over on Facebook does use the no surname searches. That works as well. Sometimes I've reversed it and just done a no first name search, but usually I don't. Chris says she loves webinar handouts and workshop handouts. Yes, because you get those sources, those extra sources that they use, because they can really point you to some interesting and helpful things to use, places to find clues for your ancestors, definitely with that. So yes. Now, guys, I have probably another half dozen or more tips over on the website at that link I put at the beginning. It's just lisalisten.com/best genealogy tips. So feel free to find more of those over there as well. Let's see, did I have anything else to share with you today? I will be back next Thursday. I am going to try and do this every Thursday. I a couple years ago, I was doing the YouTube lives, Facebook lives every Thursday. And so I'm trying to get back to that, because I really miss being here and interacting with you guys as we go, because I learn as much from you as I hope that you learn from me as well. Okay, let's see. Tips that are coming in. Jackie says she tries to do research on the county, state before you're going there, what was going on there at the time, because your family was involved in land rushes in the Homestead Act. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about, is reading. You don't have to sometimes go as academic as I do in some of those books, because I'll be honest, they can be a little dry sometimes, but they're helpful. But just reading a good history of the county or the area of the state where your ancestor lives, because it does tell you what was important to them, what was going on to find them. Because if you, as in Jackie's case, if they were involved in land rushes in the Homestead Act, then she might discover that there were some records that, of how to search for those records, or there might be a different record set she hadn't thought of to look at. So that's an important part. Oftentimes I'll find in counties will have those county histories that'll be written up. Oftentimes I think they were done by the historical societies. I see those a lot in local libraries, because I like to go to the local libraries. State libraries will often have these as well. And at the beginning of those, they will often have a nice write-up about the beginnings of the county and how it was settled and how it became populated, which is very helpful, because you can start to understand what some of the migration patterns might have been into that county. So if your research means, if you're looking for your ancestors prior to coming to that area, you might be able to pick up a migration trail to find out, a previous location. So that's a possibility as well. Let's see, what else do we have over here? Tammy said, if possible, at conferences, you go to conferences in the counties where you research. Absolutely, because they have the knowledge, and you might even meet cousins. Tammy, that is absolutely a fantastic way. And I have a really fun story with that. So, yes, definitely, if you can either virtually or in person attend some of the genealogy meetings for the societies that meet in the areas where your ancestors lived. It might not be where you live, it might be, but where your ancestors lived, or talk to people, the genealogy researchers who are in that area. They have this very unique knowledge. Often they know where things are. They know where, I always like to say, they know where the family cemeteries are in the county. They know where people were buried. So that's a really good place to go. And absolutely, you can meet a cousin. The very first time I ever went to a national genealogy conference, I was kind of new. And I went to an NGS one, and I came home, and my husband's like, after the first day, literally, he goes, so he's joking with me. He goes, did you meet any cousins? And I'm like, well, as a matter of fact, I did. And I've been invited to the family reunion. So yes, absolutely. You meet cousins at these meetings as well. So that's a great thing, a great tip to do. I think getting off, sometimes we get kind of sucked into the computer. And particularly with COVID and not having been traveling a lot, this is how we did genealogy, right? But there is so much that can be done, that if we can get away from the computer and just, whether it's attending a meeting, whether it's making a phone call to librarians, to other researchers, to have those conversations, I think that can be such a help to maybe start to break down some of these brick walls, or to get some new avenues for research. Sometimes we might not be able to break them down, but looking for those new clues or new avenues to actually research, that's the important piece of the puzzle. So yes, absolutely. Thank you guys for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Oh, wow. Yeah, definitely, Tammy. So those are absolutely wonderful ones to go to. Diane said she goes sessions for out of state for very good genealogy webinars. Yes. And what I have noticed, and you guys, this is probably not a surprise to you, is that when I was speaking to genealogy societies, with COVID, obviously they were virtual. A lot of the societies, what they told me is that they're actually staying either virtual or going hybrid, so in person or virtual. And the reason being is that they were having many people who were joining their society from other states or other areas that didn't live by and wouldn't normally join because they couldn't attend the meetings. But when they went virtual, all of a sudden their societies were growing, and they recognized that. And so it made them healthier. And so that's a great way to do. So it's an opportunity to join societies and be active in societies, because we have this virtual option now that didn't exist previously. So that was a positive thing that I am seeing with the society growth, definitely. Tanya's, yep, genealogy fair in Statesboro, Georgia. Yes, absolutely. Thanks, June. Now I'll look for that switchboard photo. There's some really great opportunities that we can do from a distance now that we couldn't necessarily do before. So, but that's a great way to learn that. Basically, social history, that's what it is. That's what reading these books is for me. That's what reaching out to local researchers is. That's what calling. I was on the phone with a Catholic diocese just this morning across the country, because I need to understand what was happening. I need to understand the Catholic faith in order to be able to pursue the records I was looking for. So this was a really helpful way for me to do that. And so it's that important. All right, guys, I am going to wrap this up a bit, but thank you so much for joining me. If you watch this on replay, feel free to offer more comments as well. And love for you to head over to the website and check out the rest of those tips that are on the website. And I will see you back here next Thursday as well. All right, guys, have a fantastic day. And again, thank you so much for joining me and participating in our chat today. Have a great day, guys. Bye.